It's episode 292 of The Platformers, a show about games and nerd culture. And I'm your host, Brian Barnett.
I'm another host, Chris Cornlisa here, Delphi.
Hi, I'm Will Berger, the third chair.
I'm Lucas White.
And this week we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We do have a lot of stuff to talk about, including some stuff that I thought we had already talked about, but we didn't. So we're going to talk about Mario this week. We're going to talk about the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. We are going to talk about the Talos Principle 2 and some other things. Well, folks, where do we want to start? Because we do have a lot to cover.
Listen, I think you guys should just knock out Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, and because we've set it up, it's time for you to knock it down and move on. Also, we have Chris's. We can bring Chris into this lovely conversation, and I can sit here and look pretty and nod.
It's very true. It's very true. We can set it up. We can knock it down. Speaking of knocking things out, Chris, let's talk about the knockout game of recent memory, the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. Chris,
you've done better transitions, Brian.
I don't give a flaming fuck. Anyways, so last time we met, I talked about this game to such a degree that some of my co-hosts were swayed by my charisma and my silver tongue to pick up said game and jump into it themselves. And I want to know, Chris, what do you think now that you have played it?
Hi, it's me. I was swayed. I didn't know about the game prior. You mentioned it. You said you were really hooked on it. I looked into it. I thought it looked cool. Went, screw it, I'll pick it up, and picked up a whole bunch of things. But that was the one that, I picked up like half a dozen games, including Mario Wonder and Armored Core, both of which I haven't got to extensively yet, so I can't really talk about them that much here. But then, I was just like, cool, I have these games. What am I going to play? I'm going to play this one instead, the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. And then I just kept playing it until it was basically done in 2 sittings, because it was great. Yeah, it was really good. So how do we want to go about doing this then? I guess you were close to finishing when last we spoke about it, Brian, I think. I don't know if you actually, how much you had to go from there.
I don't remember when we last left off. I don't remember where I was when we last discussed it.
But you have at least finished an ending now by now, I assume.
Yes. I have finished. I have finished and gotten an ending that I am I am
unsatisfied with.
The ending is satisfying. It's not what I wanted for myself, but oh God, is there a way? I don't really think there's any way for me to explain how I feel without spoiling.
Yeah, it's really a case of how much do we want to go into the spoiler cast here.
Yeah, I would have to spoil 2 endings of the game to explain what I mean, but the ending is satisfying, but I will just leave it at that. It is not what I wanted for myself.
You have to work and make the correct choices and everything if you want to get the best outcomes for all the characters you may or may not care about. And depending on what you do, your actions have consequences.
Yes.
Even as early on as like some of the early questions of the game. And
the opening, in the opening of the game, those the answers to those questions, and the cool thing is that the character tells you these are really important questions. Like these will, and they are not bluffing. These are really important questions that carry serious consequences. So
yep, and sometimes they unfold in ways you just would not expect.
Yeah, but let's stop being vague, and I will leave it to you. But yeah, I believe I was maybe 1 or 2 sections from the end, if that makes sense. The game is kind of split up into chapters
or so. Yeah, it is split up into chapters.
They're kind of split up weirdly into chapters, but the final section of the game.
Chapter 6 is like the biggest chunk of the game, and it's the second last one. So
yeah. So I believe I was either after that or I was midway through that and then I just like shotgunned the rest of it in a single play session, which is, you know, what this game makes
basically
me feel
what
like
I
doing
did as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's remind people, Chris, remind people what the game is, and then I really want to hear kind of your high level and maybe some granular thoughts about the game.
Certainly. So it's a very narrative-driven experience, very story-driven and such, where you have conversations where you are a character who is a witch who is currently in exile from her clan because she has the power of foresight and foretold its doom, and then acted in ways that the lead of the coven was like, no, you're going into exile for that. And so she's been dealing with that for the last couple hundred years, to the point where she ends up summoning an eldritch entity called a behemoth, which is very much banned and very much not supposed to do. But she's like, I am going nuts here in isolation. I want to, get power to take my life back, or to have someone to talk to, or any number of rationales you can also impart onto the character as well.
Yeah.
And then it goes from there. You are still technically in exile, but you are allowed visitation rights and such. And so various characters will come to you. You can summon them and talk to them, just go through various things, learn more about what's going on in the magical world beyond that. And just piece it all together through context clues and discussions.
Yeah, the story starts on the 200th anniversary of your exile. So she's been away for 200 years. So a lot has happened while she was gone. So a lot of the catching up has to do with that. Anyways, please.
Yeah,
please
figuring
continue.
out how the coven and everything is going and all that. And But matters then unfold. The consequences of both your summoning the behemoth do have consequences. You form a contract with them in order to get a new deck of cards, which is sort of like a tarot deck, but this is where the main crux of the actual gameplay mechanics is, and that you create new ones with elements that you get from certain characters will give you certain arcana, which you can then apply to cards. There is customization and such for how you make the artwork and such, which was a lot of fun. I tinkered with that quite a bit, more than I was expecting to.
Yeah.
But then you use the elements you gather by certain conversation pieces and by doing readings for characters with these cards in order to use, the 4 basic elements, standard, fire, air, earth, water stuff. And then you make more cards to do more readings, to make more cards, etc. As you progress through the narrative, make your choices, and then see how it all plays out and what the state of affairs is by the end. And pretty much the entire time, I'm like, this is fascinating. I like these characters. It's fairly well written. It's a very interesting setting and system and such. And overall, I'm just like, this is super compelling. And I just sat through it pretty much almost from start to finish, 2 sessions. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the world building in this game is really, really great. It draws in elements of like eldritch fiction and a lot of other kind of fictional elements that I think are interesting, and it also carves out kind of a niche all of its own.
Because it's technically sci-fi set in space, near future, etc.
Yeah.
But also witches, immortal witches doing magic and all sorts of crazy shit amidst all of this. And it's like, well, that's interesting. And you get glimpses of, the various societies and things that they have carved out. Often, before you even learn about these characters, you will see aspects of them that you can put into your cards, and then you'll hear a reference to that, and they'll go, oh, I know what that is. So that was kind of cool.
Mumjum in the chat asks the Platformers Podcast's golden question. When does it get fun? How would you answer this question, Chris?
Depends what you find fun. Because I was engaged and hooked pretty much right off the gate. But it is it is very narrative, lots of reading, lots of tinkering around with your card systems and such. If you're looking for something, action heavy or whatever, you won't get it there. But it is overall, I think I took like 8.5 hours to get my first ending. There are multiple. I'll probably go back and do more. But it didn't take any time to really get established and get its hooks in me. And then I followed it through the end. So the answer is very much immediately. It's good immediately.
Yeah, I would answer similarly. I think it gets fun basically right from the jump. Like, I mean, I think max it's like 10 minutes. If you don't find the establishing stuff fun, it starts playing with like the rules immediately. You start having interesting conversations like immediately.
It doesn't take you long before you're building your deck of cards and getting to come to grips with that whole system as well. But I was pretty much interested. One of the, I want to say it's like the fourth line in the game was one that stood out to me. And I'm just like, yep, I'm interested. I want to see more.
Do you remember what
and
it
that
was?
being, it was when asked why, the behemoth asked you why you summoned it, and Fortuna's response was because I would rather lose my pride than my sanity. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that in here. Like there's a man. I don't think this is. I'm gonna keep it vague. There's one of the first people that you meet with and talk to after your isolation is ended. They ask you to do a reading for them, and then they also ask you to do one for yourself to kind of reveal what you've been up to. But because a lot of these questions have multiple choice answers, you will draw a card, you will lay it down, and then there are like 3 really depressing and dire answers that you can give. And
I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
Each of those answers tells you something about the character that can be true. And because all of those things can be true about this character, it gives you a really complete view of their psyche. There are, and full warning, like there are mentions of self-harm and a bunch of stuff in this game. Like it is.
There is a content warning on the main menu.
Yeah.
Be advised.
Yeah, there is stuff. I didn't find it distasteful at all. I think
it certainly wasn't particularly bad as far as it goes.
Yeah.
And it's certainly understandable given the circumstances. They treat it with dignity and respect at all times. So yeah,
I found it to be incredibly tasteful and also done with a light touch. It's not blunt, but it is very like matter of fact. And also it kind of hints to some of these things, in some instances, like what I'm talking about now. But the fact that even if this is a great instance. There are a bunch of different multiple choice style RPGs where you'll have dialogue trees and stuff like that. The most boring and sometimes the easiest to navigate are ones where you choose an answer that has a quote and your character literally just says that. There are other ones where your selections will kind of have a flavor to them and you don't really know what your character is going to say until you pick it, and then it's too late. And I have definitely gotten myself in trouble with a couple of those because the tone was not conveyed to me and they were a real dick about some of the stuff that they were going to say in like other games.
Alpha Protocol remains the best example of this for best and worst because of how broken that game is. But
yeah. And then there are other games where they use the multiple choice options to tell you, the player, something about the character. And then no matter what you pick, what the character answers tells you something else. And I think that is the pinnacle of this kind of mechanic. I think that is when it is at its best. And I think that the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood delivers on that.
Yeah, it took cues from Adios in that regard, which I mentioned before, and it's very good as well. So I respect that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the biggest comparison I have to this game pretty much the entire time, I'm just fucking birds. I don't know if you can hear that, but
that was a bird.
That was a bird. Welcome to Australia.
It sounded like
enjoy the birds.
it sounded like a construction machine backing up.
Yeah, no. Anyway,
Apologies.
apologies.
Birds, man.
Fucking
So,
birds.
sounded like regardless, the closest comparison Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood gave me to was to Valhalla, the A11 Hall A Cyberpunk Bartender.
Yeah.
That game rules also, and I need to replay it now because I'm in the mood for it, but very similar kind of feel to it.
Which is funny because this game was made by the same people that made the Red Strings Club, which is a game very similar to Valhalla. And
Yeah,
I
haven't played that one though.
I only played like a couple of hours of Valhalla. I basically played until there's like somebody doing like a pop show. There's like some idol that comes into the bar. That's where I played to, and then I quit. I played I played all of Red Strings Club, and that game is amazing. So I highly recommend it.
I'll have to check that out as well then. But yeah, Valhalla is definitely worth checking out as well. And yeah, I don't know if you put me at gunpoint and said, do you like Valhalla more than Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood? I would be hard pressed to answer. But probably I would say Cosmic Wheel, just because I really like the creativity and the flexibility of the card system more than the actual bartending in Valhalla. But both are very good, and I had a lot of fun with this one, and I'm glad I took the recommendation from you, Brad.
Well, I am glad that it pleases you. This is one of my front runners for Game of the Year after having finished it. I think that we've talked about this a lot, you know, in previous Game of the Year episodes, and also in just kind of the week to week. You know, we've been kind of gearing up because it's not that far away. You know, we're only 2 months away and some change from our Game of the Year 2023 episode, which is going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot.
It's going to be like 9 hours long because what the hell was this year? It's
going to be beastly. But there are many games that came out this year, and I think a lot of them do things well. And despite many games doing what they're trying to accomplishing what they are setting out to do, there are very few games that set out to do something that nobody else is doing, or that very few people are doing, and doing that exceptionally well, carving out new spaces, or I guess just not retreading common ground for either AAA, AA, or indie titles. And the games that have meant the most to me this year have been ones that did do that, that did try to create something new.
A bit more.
Yeah. You know, Goodbye Volcano High, Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, you know, World of Horror, Wild Frost. Like these aren't like wholly unique things. There isn't anything in here that just hasn't been seen before, but they tell stories that are emotionally true, or they branch out in some form of excellence that I don't get to experience that often. And as a critic and as a consumer of media, I am really interested in the novel. I'm not interested in playing the same thing year after year, and it's just a better version of what I saw last year. I'm looking for someone to make me think about something new, which, you know, we will talk about a game that does that later, or make me reflect on some part of myself that I haven't thought about before, or maybe reframe my understanding of myself in some new way. And I also really value, you know, people that try to, or teams that try to set out and create new worlds, create new rule sets, and who play around in that space to great effect. And I think the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood does all of that.
Definitely.
You know, it is about, actually, I'll just read, because I reviewed this game on Backlogged, and I'll just read to you what I said. And you can check out my Backlogged at backlogged.com/u/Ribnax. This is very likely to be my game of the year for 2023. This is a touching story of self-discovery, sacrifice, and the dark places our minds go to when we are alone. But it's also a tale of starting over, forgiving ourselves, and forging a new way forward. It's about the lies we tell ourselves. It's about our naive beliefs, our jaded natures, and the people we meet, love, and betray on our paths through this life. It hooked me from nearly the jump, and I think it's telling that on the day that Mario Wonder and Spider-Man 2 came out, the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood is what I stayed up until 3 a.m. playing. And I don't regret anything about that, and I absolutely stand by that. The Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood is about humanity. It's about what we care about. It is about what we want to achieve and what we are willing to sacrifice to get that. It's about how we deal with being dealt a really crappy hand. And it's also about what we value as we try to create a better future, both for ourselves and for the people around us. It's really fantastic. And it is definitely a game that is going to be talked about during the GOTY episode because I will make sure of that.
Same, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
It's fantastic. Right now
I need to tinker around with the choices and see what other endings and such there are, because I know there's a couple of like drastically different ones, but I'm definitely curious to see just how much my choices and such will affect things, or even just to see what other tarot cards I pull, which will change outcomes as well.
Yeah, I played the game on Switch. I think I talked about this last time. I actually went back to the PR people who very graciously also sent me a PC key because I really wanted mouse support to like spend more time with the card building because I love it, and I do recommend that. It is still totally playable on Switch and on other platforms and stuff. I personally found that wanting to dive into the card creation system, having a mouse was like invaluable. So if you care about that and if you want to do that, go into that. I will also say if you're playing it on Switch or other things, you do have fine control because you will have like rough item placement control with your analog stick, and then you can go pixel by pixel with the D-pad. So don't worry about getting things just so. You can still totally do that on console. I just found it to be a little more fiddly than I wanted to spend time with. But obviously your mileage may vary with that. And so I think I replayed like the first like 4 to 6 hours of the game. Probably 4 to 5 hours, just switching from Switch to PC. And immediately after I finished it, like I said, I had Mario Wonder and I had Spider-Man 2, and all I wanted to do was start the game over again and do one of two things. Either play the game exactly the same way, start to finish, and make the final decision differently, or play it completely differently and just be a piece of shit asshole the whole time. And I still
it's
want
not
to
a binary
do that.
between those either. You can do middle grounds or various
you can do all
directions
kinds of,
of that. But
you can do all kinds of stuff. But I just wanted, I was like, all right, I want to see what happens if I make the final decision differently. How different is my ending? And then it's like, okay, how far in the other direction? As I was super nice in my playthrough, like they give you a lot of rope, and you can choose whether to, hang yourself with it or not. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's awesome. There's a ton of self-expression that you can do in that, both from creating your cards and also just how you interact with other people. And I think it's fantastic. So, Chris, do you have anything else to say about it?
No, that's about it, really. Just a good time. Very minor nitpicks, if any, and I'd have to go into it a bit more. It overall doesn't affect the overall experience. Novel, interesting. Not enough cool stuff like it, especially not this year. Highly recommended.
Yeah,
give it a look.
Agreed.
Awesome.
All right. Will.
Yes.
You wrote up a little thing.
I did. I did.
I wrote up a little thing that's going to go live maybe actually by the time that people are listening to this on podcast services, but is definitely not live now, about a little thinking man's puzzle game. Let's talk about it. Lead us off.
I did. So I was fortunate enough to review the Talos Principle 2 for IGN. And I gotta tell you, I loved it. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was spectacular. I thought it was fantastic. It's one of my favorite games this year. People are going to see that, and they're going to go look at the review and see that I gave it an 8. And I would ask you that as you look at that score, please remember that it crashed on me about 40 times. That is not normal for most people that I've talked to. They have not had that problem at all. It was just
I didn't have that problem at all, yeah.
Yeah, I know you haven't had it. I know Mitch hasn't had it. Nobody else I know has had that problem. It's a very, very, very rare combination of my specific hardware that caused that. So for most people, that will not be an issue. So I just want to get that out of the way. But the Talos Principle 2 is the sequel to the Talos Principle, which is almost 10 years old now. And
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And a fantastic game in its own right. Yes.
And I would say that the crazy thing is after you play 2, you're never going to want to play 1 again, because I think it's just that much better. It takes place substantially after 1. Several, like a couple thousand years, I think. They never give us an exact number, but it's a substantial amount of time.
I think it is 1,000 years after.
I think it might be like close to 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So the main character. So I'm gonna have to spoil this first game to set this up. So maybe if you don't want to hear about the plot setup, maybe come back in like 5 minutes. But the android from the first game who has taken the name Athena, she has gotten a bunch of other androids out of the simulation into the real world, and they have made a city called New Jerusalem. And they have decided that they are going to have a goal of creating 1,000 new androids, and that's going to be like the end of it. After that, there will be no more people. They consider themselves human beings. Technically, they are androids, but after that, there will be no more new people. And the reason they're doing this is because they're worried about repeating the mistakes that humans, flesh and blood humans, and the Talos Principle made, which was, basically led to climate change and the extinction of the human race in the fiction.
The problems we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, it's topical. If you want to be depressed, I'm sure there's no shortage of that.
Oh boy,
going
I love
around
depression.
in your life. Depressing things. Hopefully not. But the world's kind of depressing. Anyway, so you step into the shoes, the iron shoes, the metal rods of 1K, who is the final android. Athena has disappeared from New Jerusalem. Nobody knows where she is. And just as they're having a big ceremony to celebrate, the completion of you, the chosen one, you get invited by a strange being called Prometheus to this island. And nobody really knows what's going on, but New Jerusalem has a bunch of power issues, basically cannot provide for itself at a functional level. And there's big energy spikes from the island, so maybe we should go over there. So you and a bunch of other people go over there, and you find this big colossal pyramid and all these puzzles that are very similar to the ones that are in the simulation. You have to figure out what the heck's going on. So that's the setup. And the reality of what you do mostly is walk around and solve puzzles and read philosophy. Either real, Thomas Hobbes is in there, G.K. Chesterton is in there, fictional.
Oh, my boy G.K.? I didn't see anything from him.
He's in there.
Nice. No, I mean, I probably just didn't get far enough, but yeah.
Yeah. You've also got Stratton of Stradria, who is not a real philosopher, but is in universe a real philosopher, who comes up with the theory of the Talos Principle, the idea that if a machine functions the same way as a person does, is that machine not then a person? And so
it's interesting because the Talos Principle comes from other actual real life philosophers, so it makes me wonder why they didn't just use that. But all right, whatever.
Yeah. So it's a combination of real philosophy. There's real poetry in there. Tennyson is in there. My favorite poem is in there, actually.
Nice.
So there's a lot of really good, thought-provoking stuff in there, which makes sense because, again, I don't want to spoil the story. I really think you should just, here's the setup, go play the game. But deals with some, very heavy topics about, what does it mean to be human? What responsibility do we have to the earth and the animals that are on it? Do we have a duty as a race to spread consciousness, right? Because consciousness is one of the great things about the universe. Do we have a responsibility to, make more people, right? If we think people are good, don't we have a responsibility to do that?
The biological imperative, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, what is, should we live within our means? Should we feel like we should work to keep nature in balance? There's a lot of complicated stuff there. What should we strive for essentially, and how should we go about doing it? What should humans do in a new world that has been destroyed previously by human arrogance? And so the philosophy is fascinating, and as a puzzle game, it's also fantastic. The Talos Principle 1 is a fantastic puzzle game. This one blows it out of the water, I think. Not to say that the first game isn't good, and if you are going to play the first game, I would recommend doing it before the second one, because you're not going to want to go back.
Yeah, I can say if the puzzle quality from the first like 1 to 2 areas holds through with the rest of the game, I definitely agree with that. Like
it gets better.
I think that's a universal sentiment
better.
I've heard. It's just you can't go back.
Yeah,
it gets better. You haven't even seen the good stuff yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, I believe that, but like I was just gonna say, like even in the prologue of Talos Principle 2, like those puzzles are awesome. Like they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, a lot of the stuff from 1 is still there. You know, you have lasers that you have to guide from a transmitter to a receiver. You have, you know, pressure switches that you have to open. Sometimes you have a block you put on it. You know, sometimes you have to use the block to jump to another area. You don't really do much as 1K aside from move these objects in the puzzles, right? And interact with these objects in the world. You don't have a lot of abilities besides walking, running, picking stuff up, and putting stuff down. And the fact that they are able to make what is essentially a 30-hour puzzle game out of that is pretty fascinating. And there's a lot of really cool stuff that is game-breaking when it gets there. And you realize, like, oh, like these puzzles are... I think the way I would describe it is every puzzle that I played in the Talos Principle 1 always felt like I needed one more item to solve it. I needed another connector. I needed another block. I needed... there are teleporters in this game, which has been shown in the trailer, so I feel comfortable talking about it, where if you can see a teleporter, you can immediately go to it and carry something to it, which is really cool because the game spends a lot of time setting up this idea that, like, you cannot pass through certain things. You cannot take objects through certain things. And the teleporter's like, yeah, none of that matters anymore. Let us completely, like, halfway through the game, just rearrange your concept of what the puzzles can be. There are, again, I think this has also been in the trailers, there are other versions of androids that you can switch between to solve puzzles. So, like, you can be, like, looking at, like, copy of your...
We got some swapper shit going on.
Yeah, which is ironic because the 2 lead writers who also wrote the Talos Principle worked on the swapper. So you can swap and then be like, oh, I can pick this up, or I can stand on this other android's head, and then I can jump on top of that, and I can get to this higher place. So you can do a lot of really cool stuff. There's also...
The Swapper's also a pretty good puzzle game.
Yes, you should play the Swapper if you haven't. There's also, like, puzzles that are outside in the world, because you have, like, these huge environments that you can explore. And you have the puzzles themselves, which are marked. So each island, there's 12 islands total, has 8 regular, like, canon puzzles, if you will, like the main puzzles. Then there's 2 lost puzzles that are not marked. You have to go find them. And then there's hidden monument puzzles, which might ask you to redirect a laser beam from one of the puzzles out of the puzzle and into the environment somehow and connect it to the monument. Or it might ask you to...
They on some Witness vibes, bro.
Yeah, it might give you...
That's my immediate thought, the Witness.
A picture of something and be like, go figure out whatever this is. It might say, hey, I want you to go find this random thing hidden in the environment and activate it and follow it back to this monument. So there's at least 100 puzzles. Probably, I don't know the exact number. And if you do all of them, you open up even more special puzzles. But while you're doing this, you're also confronting this, like, very real, very thoughtful philosophy, very thoughtfully written game. These characters that have sometimes very opposing viewpoints on this expedition to find out what's going on. There's a very compelling mystery at the center of it. What is this megastructure? Why is this stuff here? Who are these characters that are claiming to be mythological figures like Prometheus and Pandora and the Sphinx?
Yeah.
What do they want? And then what as a society should you be doing? And you have the option to, engage with these characters, and you can change their minds. And the story and the
talk to my boy Byron.
Yeah, talk to your boy Byron or Alcatraz or Melville. So there's a bunch of different things to do, and I think it's really interesting to watch the game progress because you can change these characters' outlooks, and then you also because of that, you kind of choose the way that the game ends and the way that certain things happen. And again, I don't want to spoil it, but I found the story to be quite moving and very beautiful. And I was very, very I experienced a lot of emotional catharsis after the credits rolled, in a way that really good games do and really good writing does, and is very difficult in a medium where you have to give someone something to play. And I think the Talos Principle does that. It requires a lot of reading if you want to follow along with everything, but it's very easy to just do the main plot and get the whole thing of the story. So I guess what I'm saying is I think it's an excellent game. I really don't have very many knocks against it. I think there's a couple things that could be explained better. Again, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but beyond that and the technical problems I had with it, I think it is a stellar game. It's beautiful. It's well written. It's incredibly well voice acted. There's some fantastic music in it. There's amazing puzzles, a lot of replayability. I'm already on my second playthrough, still having a great time. So if you are a puzzle fan, I would really, really recommend, or just a fan of good writing in games and stuff that makes you think and engage with an environment and a story, I would really, really heavily recommend the Talos Principle 2. It's one of my favorite games of the year. It was a dark horse for me. Yeah, I did not see this game coming, but not that I didn't like the original one, but I don't think I expected to like this one as much as I did. If you'd told me oh, Will, for the last couple months, if you've been listening to the cast, I've been kind of beating the Armored Core 6 drum. I may be rethinking that now, having replayed the Talos Principle 2. And I didn't think I was going to like it that much. I thought I was going to like it. I didn't think I was going to like it that much. So, if you want my full thoughts, you can read the review on IGN. But I think it's an excellent game. If you are, into puzzle games, you need to play it. It's one of the best games this year. And Crow Team has outdone themselves.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And so I had I sat down. So as part of people who listen to the podcast will know that I am the main editorial voice for IGN Plus, which is the IGN subscription service, and we are giving away the original Talos Principle as part of that subscription service. And so I sat down with Jonas and Verena Karatzis to talk about the Talos Principle 1 and 2. So we spent about an hour talking about it. We talked about their influences. We talked about William Blake. We talked about philosophy. We talked about the big questions. We talked about Star Trek and the failure of many modern science fiction authors to imagine a hopeful future, and how...
Don't get me started, my God.
And how they wanted to do something different. They wanted to, we talked about, TNG versus Picard and how Gene Roddenberry imagined a future where humanity solved all of these problems, where we could imagine something better. And struggling with the big questions that have been with humanity since before the Greeks, but the Greeks definitely popularized thinking along these lines, asking these big questions. But whether it be what is humanity, what is our responsibility for the rest of the world, for the individual, but also for the collective. Mm-hmm. They're really thoughtful, fun people, and this game is serious and it is thoughtful, just like the original, and it does have excellent puzzles, but it's also there's also a lot of silliness in it, and there's also
very funny. It's very funny.
There's also a lot of artfulness in it, and the Talos Principle. Here's a fun fact for you: you guys have heard about how Devil May Cry was supposed to be a Resident Evil game. Well, the Talos Principle was supposed to be a Serious Sam game.
I know that they did the Serious Sam games, but I wasn't expecting them to actually have led from that to
the
that.
The Talos Principle puzzles were going to be puzzle sections inside Serious Sam. And then they were like, you know what?
What if we made a game?
This is pretty cool. What if we made we made a different game about it? Which is crazy. Like, I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, these are two all-time things. Talos Principle 1 and 2 and the Devil May Cry series. How lucky can we get to have things that were supposed to be something else and it didn't work out, so they became something arguably even better?
Yeah, I think it's really funny that if you'd gone back maybe 10 years and you had told people that Crow Team would end up making like a very thoughtful, very philosophical puzzle game, I think people would have been like, the Serious Sam guys?
Yeah.
Right? Like that is not a jump that you would logically make. But it's funny now, because Serious Sam is a great series. I quite like those games. But
oh yeah, for sure.
I think Talos Principle is kind of Crow Team's maybe their breakout, maybe their masterpiece, maybe their magnum opus, whatever you want to call it. I think it's the thing that they were kind of meant to make as a team, and they had to make Serious Sam before they could make it. And to follow up on Brian's point really quickly, because I don't want to belabor Talos Principle 2, I'll say it again, go play it.
I also would say, I haven't really talked about my thoughts on it, but I think Will did a great job talking about it, and I would also say, go play it. So,
yeah. Catch the fever. But
it's another front runner for Game of the Year. Like, what do you want? It is, and like Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, it delivers on multiple fronts. In fact, I think that Talos Principle delivers even harder on two fronts specifically. Like, the puzzles are great, the writing is great. Like, what do you want? Like, it has everything. So
yeah, it's a really stunning achievement, and I can see why it took them a bit to get from start of development to finishing. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, they started in like 2017 on like pre-production. So it took a while, and it's a big game. Like I said, it's about 30 hours, and that's not if you do everything. If you want to do everything, it will take you quite a bit longer.
Yeah, they announced that they were working on Talos 2 in 2016. So I don't know when they started, but that's when they announced it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, to Brian's point, which I think is a very salient point and a very smart point, and I'm glad the developers talked to you about this, and I'm actually very interested to read, whatever has come out of that. I don't know whatever form it's going to take, but I'm quite excited about it.
Unfortunately, it is going to be very truncated. It's going to be a very small section of the 1 hour interview, which is unfortunate. But one of these days, I'm going to be able to put the full hour interviews embedded into the post, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I was really hoping we'd be able to do that for this one, but it's unfortunately this one's not going to be that way. So
sad. But one thing I do think is very important that you pointed out is like especially with like stuff like Star Trek and stuff, at a certain point we kind of lost the ability to imagine a future where stuff is better and not worse, which is kind of an indictment on the current state of the world and also the current state of our thinking. But I wrote this in my review, like, Talos Principle 2 especially really believes in humanity very deeply. And it kind of rekindled my faith too, because, we kind of needed to be reminded at certain points of like what we can do if we really dedicate ourselves to it, what we are capable of. And I think
humanity is capable of true greatness.
Yeah. And I think that is a really good message. And, there are several endings. I think the one that I got the first time was the one that most deeply resonated with me, but I think they're all quite good. And I think if you put your time into that game and really, try to engage with the ideals that it's asking you to and the puzzles that it's asking you to, and it's not always easy, you will come away richer for the experience.
Which I think is the highest praise that we can lavish on any medium.
Yes,
absolutely.
I'd say it's a must play this year. And if any of that sounds interesting to you, please pick it up. Please support it. It's a really great game.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and you will see my interview go up on IGN as part of the IGN Plus promotion tomorrow. So if you want to read that, go over there. I will also probably post it on social media, so you can follow me on Twitter at Ribnax, RIBNAX, and you will see that there. And I will, because I know it will mean a lot to you. I'm gonna see if I can hook you up with the video interview.
That would be awesome.
So
I would love to watch that.
Love to see it. So I guess since we've been talking about Star Trek, me going next would be really appropriate.
It would.
Because I have been playing Star Ocean 2.
That is very Star Trek inspired.
Oh yeah, so much so. Like Star Ocean as a series, for the most part, has this fascination with like they call it something different, but the Prime Directive, where like it's like you really shouldn't go and interfere with the developing planets. And usually it's like
the first game in particular,
yeah, and usually it's like, oops, something bad happens, so we have to deal with it. Breaks the directive.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Just a quick shout out.
I played a Star Ocean game. I cannot remember which one it was. I think I've played 2 Star Ocean games. Do not remember almost anything about them. But the first one that I played, you and a girl like crash land on a planet, and you have to try to kind of stay hidden from what's going on there.
Sounds like the first one.
Okay.
At least for a little bit.
No, first one you start on the planet and then it comes to you. So it's
right. You don't crash.
Yeah. I think it's 3 you're talking about.
And then I played whichever one was on.
And
then I played the one that was on PS2. It might have been Till the End of Time.
Which one is the Star Ocean game where you crash on a planet and you have to hide with like someone from something?
That could be either 2 or 3.
Kira says that's either 2 or 3.
Oh, there you go. I either played 2 or 3, and then a little bit of Till the End of Time. So there you go. I know everybody was just waiting with bated breath to find that out. So I just had to jump in. But yeah, Star Ocean is cool, and I'm excited to hear what Lucas is going to say.
Yeah, hit us up.
All right. So the Prime Directive thing, Star Ocean 2 is definitely like early in kind of establishing that. So it's a similar kind of thing where it's like you crash on a planet, sort of. Well, you don't really crash. You like fall into a portal, and then your guy has to like use his phaser gun to fight off a monster. When the locals sees it, things snowball from there. I just want to give
with the Sword of Light is here to save us.
Yeah, the Sword of Light. It's actually a handgun. But just like real quick, I want to give a shout out to Star Ocean 6, Divine Force.
Great game.
Yeah, so much energy for this, and nobody showed up for 6. And I just want to say, like, they basically flipped the script on the Prime Directive thing for like the first time, and it's really cool.
I have to check that one out still.
Yeah.
6 is quite good. Yeah, I would highly recommend it.
Definitely. But anyways, so like this Star Ocean 2 remake is really caught my interest because the first 2 games were remade a while back on the PSP. And that PSP remake of the first one got eventually ported to current platforms, or current-ish, like PS4 and Switch. And so I figured, like, oh, they'll probably put the second one out, and then just silence forever, even after Divine Force came out. It turns out is because they decided to do like a full remake. And I don't know if they started from scratch or used the PSP as like a base. But this game is like absolutely gorgeous. Like, I can't believe how this game looks. It's just like it goes really heavy-handed on like the bloom and lighting, in a way
and
that
not
like
to the point of like Octopath where it goes almost too hard on it. It still feels relatively grounded, I feel.
Yeah, so like if you look at like the HD 2D games, they kind of like make sprites into polygons.
You mean like
which I think is kind of
3D
weird.
Dot Game Heroes?
Different, but yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bloom in that game too. Oh my god.
But this
the
game
biggest
is
sword
like
you ever did see.
true. That was a good game. Yeah, and this one, the sprites are just used for like the characters, and then the environments are actual like 3D environments that aren't like stylized particularly heavily. So they do a lot of work with like the lighting and the colors being really bright and contrasting, and then there's a really interesting use of like camera movement. A lot of Star Ocean, it's just like you move the stick around, the camera moves, and this one you still do that on like the world map, but if you're in like a town or something, the camera will just kind of move when it decides it needs to. And it's usually in a way that kind of like rolls kind of over where your character's standing, that like it's not quite filmic camera work, but it's like really, it feels authored, even though it's like moving to keep track of your character. It's really cool. And then there's just like lots of like neat like particle effects and blurs and all kinds of wacky stuff when it comes to like doing moves, and even like hitting an enemy on the overworld. It's like poofs into this like cloud of purple mist while the screen zooms in and loses focus. It's like it does so much. And it's just like, wow, they really like put everything into this game they possibly could.
They went very hard on it from even just the tiny bit I've played of it so far.
Yeah, and it's like one of their mercenary devs that made it. I believe it's called Gem Drops.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you look them up, it's mostly like they helped on other Square Enix games. They helped with stuff like Furyu's Crystar, which is another really interesting game visually, so it makes sense. But it seems like this is the first time they were like given a project to really take charge of, and they seem to have really like just gone as hard as they possibly could to make. It's just like it feels so much more than like the typical PS1 game remaster,
which can be very coin flip, especially when it comes to Square Enix, like the Chrono Cross remaster. Ugh, watch that terribly, you know.
Exactly. And then there's like, you know, the HD 2D stuff like Live Alive. It looks good, but it doesn't. I don't know. There's something about the way those games look, especially with like the 3D models, that just kind of makes everything look a little funky in a way I can't like put my finger on. It's like turning sprites into 3D blocks in that way just doesn't quite work. But I think this like hybrid style is really, really neat. And so I've only played a few hours at this juncture. But another thing that really hits with this game is that it is super streamlined and added really, really effective just like instructions, I guess, to a lot of its weird little menu systems. So like you go back to the first Star Ocean and or just the PSP one, and part of the conceit is like you level up, you get these points, and you use those points on all these little skills that you can pay points for. Some of them are obvious. It's like, oh, you get more attack. And there's other ones that like sort of chain together and unlock these other skills like cooking or smithing or alchemy. And what it all kind of boils down to is like choosing sort of like specialties for each of your party members so they can like work on breaking the shit out of the game in their own little way. So it's like, you go turn iron into a philosopher's stone. You go cook food that just blows any potion you can buy out of the water. If you like put all the time into it, you can really just like get stuff that you couldn't otherwise. But it's all like clicking through menus, and there isn't really any help to really explain how anything works, and it's like visually muddy and it's just a mess.
All sorts of stuff.
They do so much work in this game to like make that stuff feel good to flip through, make sense, both in terms of like just the instructive text, also visually. They give you all kinds of information that's easy to read, like here's what this skill ties into. It ties into these, or the skill you don't have yet, here's how to get it. And here's like a breakdown of like if you want to combine a sword with a specific piece of metal, here's 4 slots of possible outcomes, and here's the percentage that your person will be successful. It just like gives you as much information as possible in really like easy to understand, easy to sort of immediately look at and digest in a way that like the other games just haven't. And it makes that stuff feel so much less like tedious and overwhelming, and like it makes me feel like I can engage with these systems with so much more like confidence that it makes it more fun, even though what you're really doing is just clicking through menus and pressing the, break the game please button.
We like the information to be seen. We like to know what these systems do. It's one thing to have the process of discovery or whatever, but like a lot of the earlier like PS1 JRPGs as well, they have some really dense systems that they just don't necessarily showcase well or don't bring to the front. And so, yeah, the fact that they're actually going back now and looking at that and going, so here's how it actually works, and putting it forward so you don't need to, read like 3 guides and get a PhD to engage with the crafting is very welcome.
Yeah, you don't have to even like pull up the flavor text. I mean, not the flavor text, the help text. Which is like, it has that too. If you forget how something works on a higher level, you're like, all right, I'll click the stick, and then it'll bring back the tutorial from the beginning of the game.
Yeah, there's a place for that, for being a bit ambiguous about how something works. But I think that, notably, and I have to, I'm legally obligated to say this, the Souls games are really good at this, and they do that. But anything more complicated than a Souls game really shouldn't do it, because there's, honestly, those sorts of systems in Souls games only really work because the types of people who play Souls games are the type of people who dive into that stuff and try to figure it out. And that joy of discovery is part of what drives them through like the rest of the game as well. But also like Souls isn't that complicated. You know what I mean? So in a game as complicated as a Star Ocean or like a really in-depth like JRPG, like if the Trails games decided to just not explain shit to you, it would be a nightmare.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like it would just, it wouldn't work. So you have to, I think that is really awesome. And
ask me about the Morrowind hit chance.
Yeah.
Oh, Don't ask him. Don't ask him.
Don't. It's a trap.
We have enough stuff to cover.
Yeah.
Don't ask him.
Yeah, like besides that, I think I haven't played Star Ocean 2 before, so I can't speak. Chris, maybe you can, but like the combat seems to have a bunch of like extra stuff too. Like there's like a dodge move and like a counter that is just like no sign of that kind of thing in the original.
The perfect dodge was not there originally. I can't remember if there was I think there was a basic backstep, but you might have had to pay points to get it. So that's sort of what it is now. But if you time it just right, you do the whole go behind and beat the crap out of them. So definitely a little more engaging in that regard, and very much kind of, high risk, high reward, because you can, if you get hit during it, then you break, which means you lose a stacking buff you can maintain over time. So yeah, it's a good system for what it is. I definitely dig it.
It seems like you have a lot of control over combat. Like you have like the tactics for your NPC buddies, but you can also then just like stop the battle and be like, go after this guy specifically. Or
everything can be changed on the fly, or you can queue up skills and arts and items and such, usually on short cooldown or whatever. But you can, because you'll set like shortcuts or whatever to your L and R buttons, and then if that's not enough, or you need something more niche that you wouldn't have all the time, it's like, oh, I'm poisoned, I will open up the menu and antidote. Cool. So yeah, and
like totally out of nowhere as well. I'm sorry if I spoil this for you because it's kind of early on, but you get it's a mechanic thing called, it's like Assault or something like that, and basically it like lets player or characters who aren't in your party come in for like a little bonus attack if you're doing really well. But you can also unlock like cameos from the rest of the series. So like I found the protagonist of Star Ocean 6 in a treasure chest.
Weird.
All right. She's just like hanging out in my hammer space to come out, to do a special bonus attack, and it's just like,
I love finding protagonists in treasure chests.
I know. So it's so kind of,
you can spot them in the crowd easily. It's they have the pink hair, but
so yeah, it's just
or
like
blue or green. You don't know.
Usually blue in Star Ocean.
It's usually blue in Star Ocean.
Yeah, like I can't speak to the story too much. It is connected to the first game very distantly. You're playing as
the descendant of one of the characters, basically.
Yeah. Well, if you can pick between like the guy and the elf girl.
Yeah, you can pick the native or the Star Trek guy who gets thrust into it. So
exactly, and it's pretty like typical JRPG fare. Like, oh, there's an ancient evil or some bad stuff happening in our primitive land. Save us with your stun gun, which will assuredly get more complicated later. Because usually it's like, well,
we're painting this in a really bad light. Just for the record, it's not that bad, I swear. I can
see. Apparently, Star Ocean
right.
2 is amazing. But
it is. It's probably, I haven't finished it, but it was the one I enjoyed the most of the ones I played in the series. So yeah,
yeah. It's usually like, okay, we have this conundrum about like how involved should we get with these people's problems, and it turns out something like, oh well, here's this other group from this other government or whatever, and they didn't give a shit about the Prime Directive, and that's why everything's messed up, or something like that. But yeah, just like in terms of just taking an older game and sprucing it up and putting a lot of care and attention to it, especially for something as maybe not so friendly as like a 90s RPG from like this wasn't a Square Enix game originally, just an Enix game from Tri-Ace, so this was not a big company making these games. So yeah, seeing something like that get a refresh that is like 50% aimed at just making it like approachable and understandable is really awesome.
Yeah, so far from what I've seen, they've done a bang up job on that, especially as far as a lot of these remakes and remasters go. As I've said, it's very much a coin flip, but yeah, mad props from my early position. It's like, yeah, this is definitely one of the better ones I've seen in a while.
Yeah, like I'm playing it on Switch on an OLED, and I'm just like, I haven't reacted to a game like that in a while. Just as like, oh damn, this is just so cool.
Music's also really good too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also got like you can go to the original music from the arrangement. You can choose from different sets of voice actors, which is really weird. Yeah, it's like you can do the very original as well. You can do the PSP remake, or you can do the new ones. Or English, I believe, is new because you can't pick older ones. So it's just like, here's the English track.
There's only one English track, which I think is the one that they did for this. Yeah. But frankly, you didn't want the old English track. You don't want the old English track.
You don't know what you're asking
bad. For. It was like PS1 era voice acting was a Wild West. Star Ocean 2's voice track originally was not good. Go back and listen. You will laugh.
It was the Wild West, and that track would be in jail.
No raising the dead. I can do it. But it's not a pretty picture, and I don't like doing it.
But yeah, I always struggle with like how to package dense games like this as appealing. But like if you like RPGs, if you like just grinding different kinds of numbers until you're satisfied.
I like grinding till I'm satisfied. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. It's like you don't have to sit there and play with all the crafting systems until just the game can't stop you anymore. There's no reason to, really, but you can. And it's really fun to watch it happen sometimes, especially now.
Nice.
Yeah. Good times.
Nice. I have a need. I have a burning need.
Is it for speed?
No, it's to talk about Mario. Let's do it.
Mario,
and Luigi Mario. Let's do it.
They look so goddamn like the same.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Who here has
reference.
played Super Mario Brothers Wonder? Who's done it? Chris has done it. I've done it. Lucas has done it. I've beaten the game. I'm in the post game right now. So I don't know how I want to. Here's what I want to do. I want to start with the person who has the least experience. So Chris, Lucas, where are you guys at?
Like World 2.
Same.
Okay. Start talking at the same time.
Flip a coin.
Oh, so here's a funny anecdote. I did not. How should I put this? I'm playing the PC version of Mario Wonder.
Gotcha.
And for now, I plan to play the Switch version later, but I was just really curious.
The HD 721.
Yeah, but the thing is, like the digital Nintendo Switch I was using, those things are still in development, and I guess mine decided that VSync means to match up with the refresh rate of my screen, which was like well over 120 hertz. So I was playing that game at like double speed without kind of realizing it at first.
Wow.
Yes, the Bethesda situation.
Yeah. So that was kind of weird. I was like, this game feels different than I expected.
Feels a little weird.
Was this a Sonic game? What the hell?
Yeah. But then I realized what was happening and fixed it. And yeah.
Nice. So what do you think of the first two worlds played at 2.5 times speed?
It has a weird sense of humor that I appreciate.
Yeah.
Like the talking flowers are like really hamming it up. The touch fuzzy get dizzy thing being like the core mechanic is really goofy.
Yeah.
I
didn't think about it like that, but that is a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like it's meant to be a little more, not necessarily challenging, but less forgiving than like the Wii games in certain ways, especially for like multiplayer. Unless you decide that playing as Nabbit is okay with you.
Yeah. I've heard not great things about the multiplayer. I've actually heard people give this one knocks on multiplayer. I've only played it single player because I don't really...
Likewise.
Unfortunately, there is not online multiplayer, or I would have experienced it, but all of the people I know who love playing Mario live in different states. And so because local is the only option, and my wife and none of my friends are interested in playing Mario with me, I've only been playing it solo, which means it's been fantastic. I think it sucks that there's no online multiplayer, particularly given how great the online multiplayer in Nintendo Switch Online Super Mario World is. Like, it's great. It's really fantastic. And I mean, it's another one of those situations where, like, I want multiplayer. I want local multiplayer, split screen when it comes to Halo. And it really sucks that they're not giving it to me. And now that I've tasted online Mario multiplayer, the fact that they're not giving it to me for Wonder is like...
That is weird.
It's really frustrating.
More
because
options,
this is a
better
great,
good.
I mean, spoilers for my thoughts. This is a fantastic Mario game. And I want to play it with people.
Yeah, I've seen like problems, especially with like parents trying to play it with their kids, because like the bubbles have little timers on them now. Which were
and I think there's a punishment. Like, I think you lose lives when it messes up, which is not what was happening in the new Wii U games.
You only lost lives when all of you lost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And with like the bubbles popping after like, I think it's like 5 seconds. You can like, your kid can pick Yoshi or Nabbit and be like invincible or whatever, but that locks like the actual like main characters away from kids who might want to play with their parents, but can't rely on the bubble anymore to get them through the tougher parts.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, If you want to play as Princess Peach, too bad. You have to be Yoshi if you want to keep playing.
Yeah.
A narrow kind of use case, but for a Mario game, that feels kind of a bummer, especially after the last one.
It seems like a very yes, it is I assume a relatively small percentage of the population, but it sucks, and Nintendo should have known better. That is one of those things where it's like it may be a small miss percentage wise, but it's an unforced error that they shouldn't have made, which is unfortunate, particularly considering what I have to say about this game later on. But please continue.
Yeah, I think, like, other than that, I think last time I talked a lot about how it's got the Super Mario World thing going on, which is really cool. I think it kind of invokes that game really in really fun ways. But I haven't really played super far into it, so I will yield my time.
All right, Chris, what are your thoughts?
Not really much more to add to what Lucas said, since we're at similar places. But so far, the experience has been very good. The creativity on display is really good, with the Wonder Seeds just changing levels entirely and just, going, hey, Mario is now on an acid trip. Have fun. And the power-ups, both new and old, are interesting and pretty reliable. It's so far very solid. I'm weird for being on the Platformers podcast, I know, but I'm not, like, platformers aren't like a massive genre fixation of mine, mainly because I tend to play very recklessly. I tend to play, run, like hold the run button as much as I can. And so my situations are I'll die stupidly because I'm rushing or going too fast, or I will do something unbelievably awesome that no one can imagine that I pulled it off because I just managed to do all this shit at high speeds and go, So, but platformers aren't a huge deal for me typically, but like Mario games, they're solid. Typically, good fun. This is a good one. I am enjoying it. I will definitely be going back to it when I get the opportunity. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I've beaten it. And I think this is in my top 2D Mario games of all time.
High praise.
What's the other one?
World.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense then.
hard to argue.
Yeah. And I think after that, it would probably be 3, and then maybe... I'm not going to think about that after that. But yeah, I think that World and Wonder are the two best 2D Mario games, and I think the best 3D Mario games are Super Mario 3D World and Super Mario 3D Land. And I've talked about this a few times before on the show. I don't think you were here for this, Lucas. Chris, you may have been here for this. But I think the reason why Mario 3D World and 3D Land are the two best 3D Mario games are because those are the only 3D Mario games that I have played that translate what is great about 2D Mario into 3D. I think if you are wanting to play Odyssey or 64 or things like that, those games are good, but those don't feel like Mario games. They feel like something else.
They're a different breed, and I can understand where you're coming from that.
Like if you're going for something that's open world, that's fine. But what I like about Mario 3D World and 3D Land are they feel like you are playing through a very carefully structured 2D Mario level in 3D. And I value that immensely. So I value those games immensely.
Like the Super Mario games.
Yes. And that is what I want from Mario. So those games really, really, really resonate with me. And like
makes perfect sense. Yeah.
When the Switch came out and they added Bowser's Fury to it, I was like, oh, so this is one for them, one for me, basically. You know, I got 3D World, and the people who were fans of Galaxy and 64 got Bowser's Fury, which is great, and it's super fun, and it's really creative. It's just not really Mario. And Wonder is absolutely Mario. I am not as opposed to the new Super Mario Brothers games as I know a lot of people are, because they are trying. I just don't think they're landing it. I think they're about like 75 to 80% Mario by volume.
Yeah,
I think like most
by volume
are like,
it'll get you drunk.
it's like people see like those games look like they're made with like the Campbell soup character renders.
Yeah,
and just have no personality to them.
It's like, have you ever got, like, if you go to, like, I don't even know if this Twitter account still exists, but Shitty Mario.
We have
you guys
Mario
seen
at
Shitty
home.
Have you guys seen Shitty Mario? Look up, if you have not seen it, look up Shitty Mario. It's a Twitter account, or at least it was. Just Google Shitty Mario. It is a bunch of just off-brand knockoff Mario shit. It's really funny. And new Super Mario Brothers Wii U is probably my favorite of that bunch, other than whatever the 3DS one was, where they gave you a power where you could just make coins fucking explode out of everything. That one was pretty decent. But Super Mario Brothers Wonder recaptures something that Mario used to represent to me that I forgot that it used to because it hasn't in so long, which is imagination, creativity, and unpredictability. Mario used to be, what is happening?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it hasn't been that for ages because Mario is the second biggest recognizable IP on the planet after Pokemon. Actually, no, it's not. But
you don't think the Galaxy games are creative?
I see, and this is the thing.
Even Odyssey is creative. I think you're talking about the 2Ds at this point.
I played the first game in the Switch collection up to the B level, and then I stopped because the problem is there's a disconnect with the controls. I really needed them to adapt the controls better to the actual like Pro or Switch controller in a way that they kind of didn't. It's still meant for motion controls, and I fucking hate motion controls so much. Like, I love Zelda. I never even played the motion control game at all.
Well, Skyward Sword, you can pass on. You're fine there. But
you don't
Galaxy
really need to use the motion controls in the Galaxy
Training
games.
was the game in the podcast.
It is. But yeah,
you thought what was the game?
So I thought Link's crossbow training was like the
That's only because of Logan Plant and for the memes. But
listen, we are no. Don't let Brian gaslight you. We are certified crossbow training sickos.
We will defend that shit to the death.
We are.
The one exception to the motion controls.
There are two games of the Platformers podcast. One of them is Link's crossbow training, and the other one is Jungle Strike, Desert Strike, which is the sequel to Jungle Strike.
Desert Strike is actually pretty good.
I'm so glad I got Lucas with that one. That's a reference to Nintendo founder and now Deku Deal's master and Amiibo Alerts guy, Andrew Wolf, who is a very good friend and longtime ally of the Platformers podcast. But anyways,
let me say,
okay.
I don't think you actually need the motion controls in the Galaxy games. The only thing you need to do is spin, and I'm pretty sure you can do that with a button.
Okay. Anyways, I will say, a lot of people have held up the Galaxy games to me. I have not played the second one, and I've only played the first one up to the B world. I don't like that game. I think a big part of the reason why I don't like that game is because of how archaic the UI and the layout of everything. It is very old game in a way that I find frustrating to deal with and parse through. It's not really through any fault of its own. The fact that I even got that far, I think, is a testament to like its decency. I'm fine with going back and exploring it further, but I am a little bit inexperienced when it comes to that series. So I'm totally fine. That's a blind spot for me, and that's
I owe them a replay. I can't really comment on this. It's been too long.
I got to go back to Galaxy 2, which I am on record, and I'll say it again for the people who haven't heard it, as I think the best 3D platformer ever made, period, by anyone.
I I wouldn't contest. I don't have a preference on it. I don't have a stance on it, but generally speaking, Galaxy was real good. So I believe you.
Yeah. But going back to Wonder, one of the things that I love about it, and I don't know the degree to which our audience will know this, but basically what happened with Mario Wonder was they said, you don't have a time limit. Nintendo said, you do not have a time limit. You do not have a deadline to make this game. You do not have a budget. Take as long as you need. Take as much money as you need to pay all of your people until this game is ready. It needs to be awesome. And they took ideas from everyone on the team, and it shows because the level of creativity in this game is fucking out of control. There are certain things that are one-offs. Usually something will come back a couple of times. There are ideas in this game. There are enemies in this game that are nowhere else in the series. There are really interesting ideas that in classic Nintendo fashion, they explore for a little while and then just throw in the garbage and you'll never see them again. And Mario Wonder, because of that, it represents the best of Nintendo, which is the absolute confidence of a development team that is a master of their craft, that knows what you want better than you do. And that is the arena in which I believe Nintendo is completely uncontested in the gaming space. And I know that Will and I have had many conversations about Nintendo being the GOATs and about how other first-party offerings kind of pale in comparison, even as good as they can be. Because Nintendo at their best can't really be contested.
They are boat racing the rest of the industry to an outrageous degree.
Absolutely.
Like it would be really funny if it wasn't also kind of sad.
Yeah. But
I saw something, I don't know if it's true or not, but I saw something that said like 5 people on the team were like on the original Mario Brothers.
Yes.
Or Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Nintendo doesn't have turnover.
Yeah.
You work there for your life.
They retain everybody. They don't do the layoffs. They don't do
actually
all that.
It may not have been the original Super Mario Brothers. It may have been World, but it may have been the original Super Mario Brothers. I don't actually remember. I remember that there are 5 people working on Wonder who worked on one of the essential very early Mario games. I don't remember if it was the original one, but yes. And it shows. It feels it simultaneously. Super Mario Brothers Wonder does a thing that I think is amazing. And it's so funny because it's fucking stupid. There's a line in Futurama, I think, in the episode where Bender breaks both his arms or pretends that his arms don't work, and then he plays washboard with Beck or something on stage. And they have a line where somebody is talking about Beck, and they say, he transcends genres even as he reinvents them. And that's a fucking stupid line, but it's also kind of true with this game. Like it is recapturing the beauty of the original Mario and reinventing Mario and also doing stuff that's not really even Mario. It's very strange. A Smoke in the chat says, I thought I heard the story was Super Mario Brothers, the original, was coded by 5 people and 4 of those people worked on Wonder. I don't know. I've heard that there were 5 people on this project who worked. Maybe it's different. Maybe 4 of the people from the original who also worked on World worked on this. I don't know. Something like that. But the idea is that we have people here who are absolutely steeped in Mario bona fides, and it is brought to bear in this game. It's really creative. There are The way that the game is structured, if you haven't played it, is you're playing through a Mario level. They've removed the timers, so you don't have to worry about time. You can take all the time that you want. There are a bunch of characters that you can pick from. You can be as Mario. I played Mario the entire game because I always do that. You can play as characters like they were talking about, like Yoshi or Nabbit, who don't take any damage, which are great for kids or great for people who just want to experience the enjoyment of the game without having to worry about the challenge of it, which is totally fine. Like, do what you want to do. It's in the game. And even if it wasn't in the game, you can cheat and put it in the game, bruh. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, like you can do that. As you're going through the game, you can find, when you get to the end of a level, you will get a Wonder Seed from getting to the goal. There's also another hidden Wonder Seed in the middle of the level, and if you touch it, it will transform the level into something wholly different. And those mechanics are...
Every single one is like a one-off or something completely new. It's crazy, the ones I've experienced.
It's
one where all the piranha plants start singing and just come out of their pipes and start doing a little dance routine. One where all the pipes suddenly become worms and start flailing around or doing the up and down stuff. One where a friggin' like a stampede of bulls basically runs through and you have to ride on their back and dodge hazards and shit while doing all. It's nuts. Absolutely nuts.
It is awesome. It is awesome. And I will, I'm gonna put this in the gentlest way I know how, listeners and viewers. I did not say Super Mario Wonder was my second favorite 2D Mario game. I said it's in the top 2. And I put it that way for a reason.
Because he's abandoning the concept of whole integers. It's 1.5.
1A, 1B. I feel you.
Fools, I feel you. You fools. You didn't know. But yeah. I am guarding very carefully against recency bias. But I'm just going to say Super Mario Brothers Wonder makes an extremely potent case for itself. And I can say with confidence that Super Mario Brothers Wonder is easily the best Mario game to come out since Super Mario World. And you guys can do with that what you will.
Ooh.
But I think there is a very good chance that as time goes on, if my feelings do not change, you know, sometimes love fades over time. Sometimes tragedy happens. Sometimes things cool. You leave that honeymoon period and things just don't feel quite the same. And you need to take some action. But if my feelings do not change, there is an extremely powerful chance that this game will enter the GOAT territory discussion and will get onto my list of best games ever made.
The platformer of the platformers.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the name of the platformers was always supposed to be like a double entendre at best and a pun at worst. But yeah, it's awesome. I'm going to stop talking about it because I feel like I'm just going on and on and on and on, and you guys should stop listening to me and start playing Super Mario Bros. Wonder. But
I can't. I'm here. We're still talking.
That's true. That's true. You can't, but the listeners out there. Actually, you know what? You shouldn't go. You should stick around because we're going to talk about some more stuff. But yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. It is definitely in the discussion. Again, broken record for best games of the year. But for different reasons, which is why I'm really, really excited for the conversation in the GOTY episode, because I think that, critic pick and heart pick, they're going to be pulling. Each one is going to be pulling a lot of weight this year. There are a lot of games.
Start hoarding our caffeine now. We're going to need it.
There are a lot of games that are technically excellent, or that are superlative. in their class. There are a lot of games that really, really speak to me. Well, not a lot. There's a couple. There's a couple of games that really speak to me.
But they speak loudly and very insistently.
Yes. Yeah. It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild, guys. What else we got?
I have a thing.
That's right. You do have that thing. You did tell me about this thing.
I have a thing.
Why don't you tell the people about your thing? Hold on, Will. Why don't you whip out your thing and tell the people about it? Wait, maybe don't do that. This is Twitch.
Well, now I don't even want to. So I have been playing a very, very cool little game that I got through Evolve PR, and it has been You Will Die Here Tonight, which is on Steam, came out on Halloween, and it is a combination of basically Resident Evil and House of the Dead, but it's set top down. It has like very cool 90s style artwork. And you play as the members of the Ares squad who are catching this dude who has killed a family and stolen this secretive research vial and retreated to this mansion. And so you bust him with your guns, and then bad stuff happens, and everybody wakes up in different parts of the mansion. You have to figure out how to get out. And what's really cool about You Will Die Tonight is You Will Die Here Tonight is that you have a bunch of different characters to play from, and they can all die. So you'll start off with one character, and hey, maybe you're wandering around the mansion, you find some ammo, right? If you pick that up, the other characters can't have it. A very good chance that the character you just picked up the ammo with is going to die later. And when they do, you'll just switch to another character, right? And continue the story. And if everybody dies, you get, back to the beginning of what seems to be a time loop. So it's very, very cool. And it has this very, very interesting idea of like, oh man, like, how many resources do I take? Right? Because normally you're just like, I'm going to take all the resources, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a Resident Evil game, you pick up the ammo.
Everything.
You take everything. And if you can't carry everything, you probably are like, do I need this green herb?
You sit there playing inventory Tetris until you can, yeah.
Yes. If you're playing Resident Evil 4, and you should be. But this,
I get it. All right. I get it.
Not everything is about you, Brian. God. Anyway, and You Will Die Here Tonight. There's actually, there's a downside to taking stuff. Like, you die very quickly in this game. To give you an example, I was wandering around in the
Chrono Trigger special, we call it,
of the mansion, and I heard it was late, and I heard like this building is 100 years old and it creaks sometimes. I heard something creak, and I was like, "What was that?" Turned around. I was fine when I turned around. Looked, turned back. I was dead. Damn. From an enemy that I did not even see before I turned around. So the cool thing about this is, again, it's very easy to mess up. Like, if you do a trap wrong, you're probably dead. You don't have a lot of health. You have to manage your ammo. It's very easy to run out of ammo and only have your knife. And you can kill stuff with your knife, but it's not easy. So you're always making very cool decisions about, like, do I run away from this monster? Do I fight this monster? And if you do choose to fight the monster, you go into House of the Dead style first-person aim, and you fight them.
House of the Dead, bro.
I love House of the Dead.
Hell yeah.
I'm a House of the Dead certified sicko. And
I'm more of a Time Crisis guy, but I also
love Time Crisis.
I also respect both these picks, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, you had me at Light Gun Games.
Hell yeah, bro.
Anyway, but it feels, I guess, the most like tonally similar to House of the Dead. So
I'm more of a typing of the dead guy.
Yes, a classique. So you're wandering around this mansion. You are, solving puzzles, finding clues, trying to figure out what's going on. Very Resident Evil style puzzles where it's like, oh, hey, this painting looks like it's been moved. Or, look at this. It looks like it needs a handle. Or, this has a symbol on it.
How many crests of different animals do you want to plug into this one thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have the blue key?
This bookcase looks like it's missing a book. So you're solving these puzzles. You're going around. You're, fighting when you feel like you have an upper hand, right? Mostly trying to avoid combat because you're very fragile. Like 3 hits will kill you. Just straight up, you're dead. And then, you switch to another character, and you have to be like, oh, if I want any of the stuff that character had, I guess I'd better go find their body. And then you go do it, and you keep progressing. And it's got multiple endings depending on who you save. It's not super long. I haven't completely finished it yet.
So what you're telling me is this is the spiritual successor to Zombie U.
I never played Zombie U, so I can't make that comparison. All I can say is...
That's a joke for like 2 people out there that exist.
Yeah, actually, funny story. When I was in college, I took a writing for video games class, and we had to make a project by the end of it. We actually made a project called Zombie U, but it was like short for Zombie University. And the idea was that you would play as students who were at this university when a zombie outbreak occurred. And your major would determine what you were good at. So, like, the writer was your save point.
Hell yeah,
and the Jacques was really good at melee combat. Then you had, like, a chemist who could make you healing items. It was a great pitch. We worked really hard on it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That is my personal connection to Zombie U. But
Zombie U, not that Zombie U.
Not that Zombie U. But You Will Die Here Tonight is really, really interesting. It looks gorgeous. It's got some genuinely creepy, like, sound design and video design. One of the really cool things, it's like a very like small feature, is that you can look through the keyholes and he has it on the Wii U.
Yeah, it was a Wii U exclusive. That's why
it got ported though.
Oh, did it? Well,
I
mean everything got ported except Xenoblade X. Nintendo, please. I even have it on a Wii U. I don't care, but for everybody else.
The other cool thing that I think is really cool is you can look through keyholes before you go through doors. So you can see like, oh, is there some stuff here? Like, what's going on in this room? And it's also got really excellent sound design. Like, if you can hear somebody's footsteps, you can tell the direction that they're going in.
That's awesome.
So if you're like in a room and you hear footsteps from another room and you're like, I don't know if I want to go out there, and the footsteps go away, it's like, oh, it's safe now. And then they'll come back and you're like, I don't know where they are. So it's got this like constant tension. It's funny. The writing is pretty clever. It sends up Resident Evil pretty hard. Like the Chris stand-in is an enormous idiot. Like just absolutely dumb. You've got like, your Barry Wheeler stand-in who's wearing like the same exact vest. It's great. And
is one of them the last name Sandwich, first name Jill?
No.
Missed opportunity.
I think the Jill stand-in just design-wise is a woman named Kowalski. Which
Kowalski, you're the master of unlocking.
Yeah. But it's a really, really cool game, and I want to play more of it before I give like a final verdict on it. But I do think it's really fascinating. If you like horror games and you're looking for something original, like I would definitely recommend it. I've enjoyed every moment that I've spent with it so far. I can't wait to play more of it. And I think the cool thing is like it encourages you to experiment. Because if your characters die, like it's not really a big deal because you've got more characters, and if they all die, time loop.
You heard that, kids. Embrace experimentation. Uncle Will says so.
Yes.
Embrace experimentation even up to death.
Yes.
You will just pick a different character. It's fine.
Mom Jump in the chat says, Zombie U mascot, fighting corpses. Go corpses.
Yeah.
So with the time loop stuff, does that impact gameplay in any way? Like when you start again, is it like it's a new run? Or is it just like basically starting a new game?
Certain things carry over.
Okay.
Maybe a roguelike?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's not entirely, right? Like certain things do carry over, but it's different than a roguelite. Like it has roguelite elements in it. I definitely wouldn't call it a roguelite. I think the most important thing is that you've learned like basically how to navigate the mansion. Right, and where stuff is and what the solutions are. Because I remember one time I was playing, and you have to. This is very early, but you have to get like there's like a rotating, like item goes into very dangerous box. Box spins around with a bunch of other boxes. You have to figure out, what the box is. It's not actually a box, but I'm trying to avoid spoilers. And I died the first time because I wasn't expecting the boxes to start spinning around, and I was not paying attention. And then So the next time I come down there with a very different character, I'm like, all right, this time I'm going to watch them spin. Right. And then for the future, I know exactly what I need to do once I get that item, where to take it, all that stuff. I know like where the upgrades are. I know where certain puzzles are. I know how certain encounters are going to play out. So I think it does like the very cool thing of rewarding you for your knowledge and just like playing around and experimenting and seeing what happens. And it also reminds me very heavily of a little classic on the Nintendo DS called Aliens Infestation. For the 5 other people who played that game.
God, I thought you were going to go somewhere else, and I was about to just absolutely be enraptured.
I don't think I ever did play this, but I have heard
in delight.
This one.
Where did you think I was going to go?
A way forward classic.
Well, I thought you were talking about it's about accumulation of knowledge, and I thought you were going to reference 999, but
I actually haven't played 999.
Oh my God, dude.
So, but the reason that I think it's like Infestation is that you can only have so many Marines. When they die, you have to go, rescue them if they don't want to. You don't want them to get like chest bursted. You can't obviously rescue people here when they're dead. They're dead. But that level of increasing knowledge and like managing this team that you only have access to one at a time reminds me very heavily of what I think is a very underrated game on the DS. So final review next week, probably. Nice. But
keen to hear.
You Will Die Here Tonight. If any of that sounds good to you, I highly recommend it. It's on Steam. It's like $20. Great art, very clever. Looking forward to playing more of it, so definitely check it out. If you are still in a horror game mood, and I don't know about you, but for me, October lasts until December 1st. So,
yes, it does. Actually, I made certain proclamations that Christmas decorations are not allowed to be put up until December 1st, and got some pushback on that. So I got some fights to happen in this house. I gotta tell you that.
I do not condone or approve in any way, shape, or form the continued occupation illegally of November by Christmas.
For real. Let Thanksgiving rock, especially if you're in the US.
My birthday is at the end of the month. You don't put Christmas decorations up until that's done. Okay? Okay. Done.
Look,
cool. Carry on.
All right. I've had a couple of drinks, so I think I'm comfortable calling for a ceasefire between Halloween and Christmas.
Yeah, that ceasefire is called Get the Fuck Out of November.
It is. Kind of like another ceasefire that I would ask for right now is basically just get the fuck out. But anyways.
I what you did there. I would argue that, Halloween actually has the decency to end on the last day of its month. Thank you, Halloween.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Classic move.
You go to November 1st, you're like, Halloween is over, unless you're a sicko like me.
Halloween is over, but you can still appreciate the Spooktober effect.
And I will be honest. I do not mind a little bit of hangover, right? I do not mind if people do not immediately pick up their Halloween things until like a half of a week or maybe even a full week or so into November. I don't mind, because you know what? It doesn't get to be around that much. And I will say, this year, I pivoted over. I've always thought of Halloween as kind of a minor holiday. I think that something happened this year when I was going around, when I was taking Riley around. We all actually wore, I showed some closer friends.
Great
I think
costumes.
I've showed you guys.
Great costumes.
So I showed them. I have not put this like out in the world, but we wore themed costumes based off of something that my daughter really loves. And I will tell you, it is something that is very well known. And when we were walking around the neighborhood, so many people, like every 2 to 3 minutes, somebody was calling out to us from the other side of the street, "Oh, are you this character and this character and this character?" And it was awesome to be like characters that everybody recognized, everybody loved, and just walking around like that. The interactions that we have had, and I actually had kind of like a philosophical discussion with my wife about this, about how like Halloween kind of represents the best of who we are as people. Like how we put ourselves out there, we give something to strangers along with compliments. We don't ask anything in return. We give freely to people who come to our door. Like, it's a very charitable holiday. You know,
It's
and
social, it's generous, and it's creative.
yes. And I don't know what it was, but I went from being like Halloween is like a minor holiday that I think of about on the same level as like Easter or something. And now I think Halloween might actually be my favorite holiday. Like
He's one of us. He's one of us.
It's pretty crazy that happened in 1 year. But yeah, and it was so much fun and it's great. And I'll be all right when Christmas comes around, but I got to say I am looking forward to the next Halloween. So,
and if you'd like to keep that, that mindset going and you like horror games. I know Brian isn't a great big horror guy, but I am. Definitely, go look into You Will Die Here Tonight. Honestly, there is a demo. There's a demo that you can play.
I
think if you want to get a feel for it.
I would love to do. This might need to be a special episode, and it would be a weird one. But I would love to sit down and explore the games that I have played that are really spooky or freaky that didn't bother me, to try to pinpoint why I'm not like why I don't think of myself as a horror guy, but I've actually played a few games that are pretty scary. Because I have no idea what it is. It's like, it seems completely random. Like, I've seen some horror movies that I really like Unbidden. I've played some horror games that I really like, and then there's other stuff where I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. Or like, I'm nervous. Like, I nearly platinumed Dead Space, but I'm like kind of intimidated by Resident Evil. Like, what is that? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Anyway, it's really funny because like Resident Evil is super campy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dead Space is like
Dead
horrifying.
Space is way more legit in that regard. So
yeah, Dead Space takes itself much more seriously, and I would argue probably has like grosser stuff in it than most Resident Evils.
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense, but I want to understand it. It's very strange.
Have you played Soma?
Soma, no. I have not played Soma. I have it, I think. But I also know that
Soma is one of those games that I think everybody should play, even if you're, really scared or don't care for horror or whatever, just because the story and the writing is that goddamn good. It's worth experiencing. So
yeah, the thing about that is one of my favorite critics podcasts covered it, and I listened to the entire thing, so like I know everything that happens. So I mean, I could
still
play
worth checking it out, but yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I think that idea is interesting. I like exploring stuff like that.
You should just, if you can't play Soma, you should just play Fatal Frame 2.
No frame of reference.
But yeah, I think it's very interesting. I would love to dive into that sort of stuff. But anyways, yeah, we got Cosmic Wheel, we got Talos Principle, we got Star Ocean, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, we got You Will Die Here Tonight. Is there anything else that we wanted to cover before we sign off for the night?
I still have Wargroove 2 that I would like to talk about just very briefly.
Nice.
So, has anybody here played it or the original Wargroove?
I played it at PAX, but I haven't played the full game.
Yeah,
I played Wargroove 1.
I played the vast majority of Wargroove 1, but have not played the sequel.
Okay, so the quick and dirty of it is Advance Wars wasn't going anywhere. Nothing was being done with the franchise. This was before the reboot camp was announced. So,
is that even out
Chucklefish?
It is.
Yeah, it came out. It got delayed by a year, but it came out this year.
I feel like that got ghost
launched the war
after
in
the
Ukraine
ended.
thing. It was allowed to come out.
Yeah, it got ghost launch, but they basically it was slated to release. Then the hostilities opened, and they're just like, the plot of this kind of has the Russian analog invader country to start. This might be bad taste. We'll hold off, and then they released it like a year later.
This might expose my ignorance, but there's more than one global conflict going on at once. Is the Ukraine thing over?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No, Nintendo just got tired of waiting, I think.
Okay. Whatever.
They gave it a year
saves us
of
all.
being
They ended the war.
constant, new stuff. They figured, okay, whatever, it's not going to bother anybody. And then it didn't, because it came out and I don't think anybody talked about it, like good or bad. But it was good. It was a really good reboot. nonetheless, in the time when Advance Wars was still in, basically
languishing.
DS purgatory,
Yeah.
So it was Chucklefish. Chucklefish.
Yeah.
The Starbound guys. They released a game that was like, what if we did Advance Wars, but it's fantasy? And that was Wargroove. And it was good.
So
it
good.
was very, very solid. Added a couple of little things, but was very much just, we have Advance Wars at home in the most loving sense of the word.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But solid and didn't take itself too seriously. Overall, pretty good game. Then Wargroove 2 is much like that, but I believe it got outsourced to a different group, and they decided to experiment with it in some interesting ways. For a start, the story is significantly better in that it's actually trying to do stuff with characters, with drama and intrigue and stuff, and the difference in the writing is obvious and night and day. It's not
The first game
perfect.
is very basic boilerplate stuff.
Yeah, it's basic. You don't worry about it too much. This one actually is trying to do something, and it has some interesting concepts. And I found myself going, all right, I dig this. So, yeah. It's split up this time. Instead of just one kind of linear campaign of a couple of side missions you can go off and do that kind of goes through all the various factions and such. This one is split up into smaller campaigns that coalesce to a final couple of missions. And each of those covers like a different threat or system or conflict or whatever that ties into the big one at the end, which is then resolved. But the last
kind of StarCraft
campaign
vibes from this.
a little bit, but the last campaign has some of the best missions I've seen in this entire thing, because it literally is like every faction suddenly joins in, and it's just an absolute clusterfuck with every commander on the field possible. And it's like, wow, all right, this is cool. But it has some interesting... It adds a few new units, all of which are very kind of niche. They have like interesting use cases for like basically to fill in gaps that the existing set of units had. They added a second tier of commander powers. So your commanders, you fill a bar, you would use a power. Their commanders are one of the strongest units on there, but if they die, you lose. Now they can charge all the way up to 200% and do an upgraded version of their ultimate. So that's something that the Advance Wars games did as well, but they added it in here and it's good. And yeah, a lot of the new units and things are very utility, very interesting kind of applications. So things like, for example, there's one which is just, it's a giant frog and its tongue can grab something and pull it one tile closer. So you can pull it out of position or even drag something, drag a ground unit into the water and kill it. Things like that. So interesting tactical applications and use cases. My biggest complaint is probably that they don't have enough situations for these units to properly shine, and more often than not, they'll be isolated to a level or two in one of the campaigns and not the rest. There's very few kind of open base missions where you can really play around with tactics and fuck around with it. And I feel like that's a bit of a letdown. And there's no arcade mode in this one. Instead, they have what is basically a small kind of, it's interesting. It's a roguelite mode. You select your commander and a power and a couple of units, and all damage is persistent, and then you go through small skirmishes or whatever, small encounters, have a chance of buying or recruiting new units and things like that, and try to get to the end. And certain enemies that you kill will give you permanent currency, which you can then upgrade in new things, unlock new maps and factions and all that. It's a cool little mode. I like it. But ultimately it's not... I don't think it's essential. Like if you like Wargroove 1, you will like Wargroove 2. I don't know if it does so much that I would absolutely recommend you run out and grab it if you're on the fence. And I like what they've got, but there's a few areas in which I feel is just, again, the lack of some of those missions to really play around with the tactics is kind of disappointing. A few of the modes from old aren't there, which no big loss really, but yeah. But there's what will be interesting to see is that the map making capabilities have been further expanded, and it has full, user content generation and such, the ability to make full on maps for both skirmishes and then campaigns and all of that. And I'd be very interested to see if anybody makes anything cool, because I never really played around with the first game, but it had that as well.
There was some really interesting stuff that people had done in Wargroove 1 with the map maker tools. Yeah. That was a really robust, like, if you wanted to just be a Wargroove player, you could do it.
Very much so, yeah. I know that was the case. I just never delved too deeply myself.
Yeah.
But I definitely think there's more functionality here for different triggered effects, more units, more variety in what you can do. And a few other mechanics I haven't really touched on, like you can give items to certain units, which will change functionality. And
that's interesting, because I don't remember there being items in the first game.
There weren't. Occasionally there'll be something like, for example, there'll be one where you don't counterattack, but you do triple damage.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to have, or things like that. And sometimes they use them to kind of turn like what would just be a regular unit into a mini boss, so they don't have to deploy a commander for story purposes and such. So it's an interesting way to use that, and which I'm sure various map makers and campaign creators and such will probably end up doing themselves. So
yeah,
there's some interesting stuff here, and I think it's overall a good package.
Nice.
But it's not like, gonna set the world on fire or anything like that. So props to them for trying. I appreciate that they tried a few things more with the story. Doesn't quite always land, and the ending is a little bit unsatisfying, I feel. But overall, yeah, more Wargroove, more good. I dig.
Nice.
Good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Anybody else have any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, just 2 words. Shared it on a couple of different platforms already. May as well do it here. RoboCop good.
Nice.
Good to hear.
Nice. I dig it. Cool.
It's a what is it? Heart pick?
Heart pick? Is it?
Heart pick.
Yeah. Contender.
Yeah.
For
Let's
sure.
go.
Nice.
We
For
love
sure.
it.
Nice. RoboCop.
Good stuff.
The cop who doesn't have a heart, actually.
Or does he?
Or does he?
Take that, Talos principle.
It's gonna be a fun Goaty episode, guys. I'm just gonna tell you. Anyways, any other closing thoughts? I feel like that's a pretty good way to end. All right, here we go. Thank you all for joining us for episode 200. And can you guys believe this? Hold on. Come here. It's episode 292. We're getting close to 300. What the fuck?
Jeez.
We've been doing this for a while. I've been doing this for a while. I brought these guys along for the crazy ride.
We got dragged into this.
It's true. Kicking and screaming. I made them. Unfortunately, they didn't realize that I knew blood magic, and I had them sign the pact, and that's a wrap, boys. That's a wrap.
Eyes are open. My insight has increased.
Yeah. Eyes on the inside, baby. Anyways, thank you for joining us for episode 292 of The Platformers. Join us live as we record each episode at twitch.tv/Ribnax, RIBNAX. And you can also check the video archives later on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Ribnax, RIBNAX. If you got topics of discussion that you want to hit us up with, hit me up on Twitter at Ribnax, or on Blue Sky at Brian Barnett. Brian with an I, like a real man. And yeah, you can check out the stuff that I'm doing on IGN. I've been doing IGN Plus promotions. I've been doing interviews and stuff like that. I did a piece on a cool collaboration between Rock Love, which is a kind of premium jewelry manufacturer, and the team at Blizzard who does Diablo. So there's like some cool stuff there, where there's like Lilith rings and necklaces and stuff, and some stuff based on Inarius. It's all super sick looking.
We didn't talk about BlizzCon.
Oh, we didn't. I guess we'll cover it next time.
BlizzCon happened, guys. Check it out.
BlizzCon happened. but yeah, that's a cool thing. And then tomorrow my interview with 2 main narrative writers from the Talos Principle 2. That is going up, and you can grab a key for the Talos Principle 1 if you are an IGN Plus subscriber. So that's a lot of the stuff that I've been doing. I've also been doing surprise. If you pay attention to IGN deals, I've actually been doing shifts on IGN deals. So you've been able to see a couple of ridiculous things that I've said while I'm posting deals about beautiful orange watches that Will thinks are absolutely hideous. But yeah, so you can check me out, I guess, there. But yeah, that's what I'm up to. And we got some cool stuff coming up, but we're just gonna have to wait to tell you about that.
Well, segueing on to that, my name is Chris Cornelise. You can find me on the internet as Delphia in most places. My website is versusthebacklog.com, vsthebacklog.com. There is something new there. It's not much, but it's there. And there will be more there. And I am also prepping some stuff for some other cool things, which Brian just alluded to, but we cannot talk about just yet. And that's me.
What's up, everybody? If you want to see my most recent things, you can check out my review of the Talos Principle 2 over at IGN. You can also find the month-long coverage I did during October for the upcoming Tekken 8, which I'm very proud of that I did for the IGN first that we did on Tekken 8.
It's good work.
Thank you. I've also got a couple other exciting things in the pipe that I can't talk about yet. One of them is the thing that both Brian and Chris have alluded to that I'm very excited about, and a couple other things that I'll be able to talk about once they go up. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at @ByWillBurger. That's burger with an O, not a U. And you can find me on Blue Sky at Edgar Allan Bro. Also at IGN at Edgar Allan Bro. That's me.
Nice.
And I'm Lucas White. You can find me on Twitter at Hokutono Lucas. Blue Sky, same thing. Most of my writing has been at Shack News lately. So if you want more context to how good RoboCop is, you can hop over there and read my review. And yeah, I can also allude to the thing that Will alluded to, the thing that Chris alluded to, the thing that Brian alluded to.
I love it.
If you alluded to it and I alluded to it, then who's driving this plane?
Oh no! I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Anyways, thanks again. If you like the show, leave us a review or tell somebody about it, because that's how we grow. From everybody here at the Platformers, we hope you have a wonderful week and stay safe out there, because until next time, we are out.
Peace
Out.